Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
Philosopher and the Fool.
So, Lord of the Rings, you read it. You like it. Tell me about it.
Oh, you can't do that. That's too out of nowhere.
Right, what do you like?
No, this isn't our gag anymore. Alright, your topic.
My topic? Wait, you don't want to talk anymore?
It's not our gag. You didn't ask me. I'm going to give you a chance to speak.
Well, I already asked you if you were going to do it or not.
Anyways, Lord of the Rings. Favorite series. Done.
Start again! Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
Philosopher and the Fool.
So, what do you like, Connor?
Nope. Alright. Anyways, The Lord of the Rings.
You like The Lord of the Rings, do you?
The Lord of the Rings books. I recently listened to them on audiobook over the course of the winter after Christmas time, and I think it's one of my favorite book series, although I've already said this.
Go on. What do you like about it? What do you like about it?
Well, a lot of people have said it's too dry for them, but I really like the dryness of it. It's very much just a straightforward, very straightforward story. It's like, and then this happened, and this happened, and there's a great battle, and these things happened in the battle, and this person died, and this person lived, and the enemy was driven back to this point. It's just...
Perfect story would just be a bullet list of activities.
Well, that's like how it does battles. The actual, like, there's story to it, but also just like the way the characters speak. It's like, well, let's not talk about that right now, for it is already a dark day. It should not become any darker. And just
not. So you like that the characters stop talking about things?
Well, partly, yes, but it's also more just everyone's really polite and courteous, and there's no problems from miscommunication.
Yeah, miscommunication's huge in a lot of books.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
They're heroes in that story. Like, even the little hobbits are heroes and greater than what they seem, and just the story, it just speaks of like good.
Yeah,
and
it shows you like how to be good and how to be a hero and how to face the unbeatable darkness.
Yeah, well, it also just like shows you, I think, like at times how to be a good person in the writing, like how Aragorn acts, like his whole why people like him. Tolkien sort of wrote about like the reasons why people like Aragorn. It's like he's a man that listens to people, and he speaks his own opinions, and he's kind, and he also shows it. Like the whole thing when they were like, let's not darken this day by talking about this anymore. His thing I actually really like.
Avoiding responsibility.
It's not avoiding responsibility, it's more so like someone, I don't know, starts like going, oh, you hurt my feelings because you did this to me and this to me and this to me, and then Aragorn's like, let's not talk about that right now, we're having a good time.
I don't think this marriage is going well. We need to... Let's not talk about that right now. Come on. To the theater.
Yeah, so...
To the zoo.
It's not so much as like, you're having like dinner with your family, and then like your wife starts like getting upset having a spat with you, and you're just like, shh.
Yeah, exactly. That's
right now. We're having a nice evening. Let's just enjoy it while it is, and then afterwards we can discuss it and when it's a more serious time.
I've got a topic I want to talk about. Let's not talk about your thing right now. I'm Aragorn.
It's not quite. He does it much better than that, but
yeah, he's like, shh. Hey, I'm the king. Oh, sorry, Your Majesty.
Aragorn didn't want to be king, but he sort of, like, it's very much, he's one of those, like, Aragorn's a really, like we talked about, like, he was afraid of becoming king, didn't want to be king, but he had to, so
well, yeah, that's what every king has to do, because if you're born into the position, you have to become king. Yeah. That's why it's hereditary. It doesn't have to be, but that's why it was, I think. And it makes sense. Like, you have to not want it, you have to just be forced into it, otherwise you're no good as a ruler. You can't trust anyone that wants power.
And also, there's just, like, some of the bits of humor, like, they're sprinkled throughout that book, so they're really good. Like, this whole section where, the people are in the House of Healings, I can't remember their names, Faramir, Mary, and, whatever her name is, the daughter of King Theoden. Mm-hmm. And they're all in the, like, trying to just not die, basically. Aragorn goes in there, and he asks this one woman, do you have any king's foil around? And, oh, king's foil, yeah, no, I don't know about that. And then she just like starts going off on stories like some old woman. And then it's like, I'll go looking for it, but you should check with the herb master as well. He might know where it is. And so Aragorn goes to the herb master and it's like, do you have any Ellis? And he's like, what's Ellis? King's foil. Oh yes, king's foil, the etymology of that name. And he just like goes on and on and on. Aragorn's just like, I need this damn herb to heal them.
Doesn't sound like he's...
And everyone's... Well, he's not getting frustrated. He's quite patient. But I'm saying just like what sort of like is... They're taking forever to get it. And it's just sort of like this slight bit of humor of like there's surrounded by... competence surrounded by incompetence.
And that is... an example of his.
It's his very dry British humor. Like it's, I don't know. I just really like that part where.
Oh, so this isn't more on Aragon. It's just more on the book in general.
Yeah, the book.
So you just like the humor of it.
Yeah, like the humor part is pretty funny. Or like there's another part where Mary's asking Aragon like, "Oh, do you happen to have any pipeweed on you? Because I'm afraid I lost my pack on the battlefield." And Aragon looks at it and it's like, "I did not come across like a whole kingdom and go through the paths of the dead where speed was important, carrying a bag of tobacco or kingsleaf just so you could smoke it, hobbit, young hobbit."
You want to say tobacco?
Yeah, he did, well, it's pipeweed. And then, but he sort of says it like with a smile, jokingly, but then he leaves and they look down and Mary's pack is right there and it has his pipeweed in it. It's just sort of making a joke, like making light of the situation. I didn't deliver the joke well, but it's hard to remember. I like it. I like the humor. So anyways, what was the thing that you were talking about now?
Well, I wasn't talking about anything. Just, yeah, so, yeah, that kind of humor, I think I see what you're saying. Like, it's very gentle. And
Yeah.
I think you're expressing it in a modern lens of, like, calling someone an idiot and teasing them, which is probably not doing it justice.
Yeah.
But, like, the sort of gentle, like the one that I remember is Faramir pretending that he wants the One Ring, and then the hobbits are terrified, and then he sits down and... Well, he does it to test him, but his men think he's making a joke. Yeah. And it's the sort of, like, it's very serious in a way, but it's also, like, very lighthearted because you don't actually cut to anyone's, like, character. Yeah. You don't say, like, you're saying the joke wrong.
Yeah.
Well, it's very, like, very about the events rather than the people.
Yeah, Faramir basically says, like, I was testing you, I'd never take the ring.
Yeah. Like, if I joke that, well, it doesn't spoiler for your birthday present, I can't
think of another example besides that, though. Spoilers? Alright, I'll plug my ears.
No, it's alright.
Then I will know.
You edit this.
Okay, right. We'll just
Alright, you need to like put like static over the part where I say it so that you don't hear it.
No,
when you're editing
let's
it.
not do this.
Yeah. So speaking of, unless you have more to say on Lord of the Rings.
No, I just.
So is that the two things that you like? Just the sort of straightforward, the cleanness of it almost. Like
well, it's also really well written.
It's very well written. It's written like a poem.
Yeah,
I don't know if you noticed, but if you can take paragraphs out and maybe getting it read, you notice more so.
Yeah.
And if you arrange them like a poetry and read it at the right tempo, it actually is like it's the whole thing's a giant epic.
The story's really good too.
He actually tried to write Beowulf. Basically, it seems like he tried to write an epic.
I like the switches in between. Like it's all right. This is what's going on in the world, and then it goes all the way back to okay. The hobbits are here now. It continues with that story.
Yeah.
And then it goes even after they destroy the One Ring. Spoilers.
Yeah.
It goes back to a point where the people are in the House of Healing, both Faramir and what's her name? Emo something.
Eowyn?
Not Eowyn. And they're in the
Eowyn?
house. Eowyn, yeah. So it's for Faramir and Eowyn, and they're like, Aragorn hasn't returned yet, and they're worried, and then she's like, I don't know if I'll ever recover from my sickness because my heart's grown dim, and that sort of like has their romance happen, and like the light comes and eagles fly, it's like, we're going to battle to help them, and they're like, oh, the eagles have gone to help, then the eagles come back with a message saying they won, and it's just like that whole sort of idea of like, he goes back and tells the story instead of like switching back and forth like this is going on here and then let's switch over here and this is going on here. He doesn't interrupt his own flow by switching perspectives until he's completed that section.
Right. So he's not like Malazan Book of the Fallen, which shows that like keeps switching viewpoints to carry along the story.
Yeah. And I've never seen it done before in a book. That sort of thing, just like, all right, this has happened. Now we're going to go here and this has happened.
So it's basically kind of like the Hoodwinked movie where they show the story from one point of view and then from the other, and
kind of like in the movie they do switch back and forth. So like in the movie when there's the battle of for Helm's Deep, let's say, going on, it switches back and forth, like not in the very like to the hobbits going through wherever and then in that siege, and then it switches back and then it switches to the Ents marching on Isengard. Yeah. So it keeps jumping perspectives. In the books, he completes a section, then moves on. So it's like, the Ents go to war, they fight, they destroy it. All right, I'm done with that. Now let's go to Helm's Deep. They do all this in Helm's Deep, and then they go to where the Ents are in Isengard. Okay, I'm done with that. Now let's go to the Hobbits, right after they left from wherever, right after they separated from the Fellowship of the Ring. Haven't even talked about them for like a lot of the book. And now we're going to continue their story. And that ends their story. And then the third book is like, all right, and now we're going to go back to Aragorn and his group and how they're trying to like fight the battle in Minas Tirith. And then once he's done that section, it's like, all right, we're going back to the Hobbits. They're in the Dark Tower after Frodo got stung by Shelob. He gets rescued. He goes and destroys it. All right, we're done with that. Now let's go back to this part where they're in the hospital.
So I guess there's no cliffhangers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's sort of his cliffhangers because how he does it is they're battling at the Black Gate and they're like losing, and then he switches to the Hobbit.
Right. So what would you define as him ending it then? He never goes back to the same scene?
Yeah. Well, he does go back. It's just more, it's like much longer in between. Like it's a whole book basically, like a whole half book before you get back to Frodo and Sam and what they're doing.
Right. So what's like basic? Can't really think of, actually I can't really think of many examples beyond Malazan Book of the Fallen that are really scattershot, because Malazan Book of the Fallen is quite unusual.
Well, there's some books that like switch from chapter to chapter.
But those are fairly rare. Like a lot of, like Harry Potter, for example, is all from the perspective of one character, except 3 chapters of the book, maybe. And
well, like Brandon Sanderson's books switch back and forth between his characters.
They stay pretty steadily on like the main character.
Yeah, but like each chapter switches every once in a while.
It's like every 2 chapters. But,
yeah,
and that's still pretty like consistent.
I don't know. It's just...
maybe just because you read the Malazan.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because Malazan Book of the Fallen is quite unusual that it switches, and that's the way I write as well, is switching fast. And it's definitely, but I'm sure like there's other books out there that are like, because let's say the Warded Man trilogy, right?
Yeah.
Like in that book, it's focused very much on one character at a time.
Yeah.
For very long periods of time. Like it's like the first third of the book is the guy growing up, and then the second third is this young woman growing up.
Yeah.
And then the third bit is her seeing him from the outside.
Yeah. And I don't know. It's just I really like the way Lord of the Rings was written, and like its descriptions of things are really cool, and like the evil in it and the mysteriousness. Like there's the sentries at this one point, and the hobbits actually can't get past them because like they're so terrified they can't like steel their will to get past these things. Like they're just emanating evil. And they're like, no, but I have to. And so they like steel themselves and strengthen their will, and then they go through. Or even just his writing, like a lesser man could not have been able to do this, but whoever was no lesser man or something.
Yeah.
And so he does that. Or it's like, no strong elf or strong man could pierce Shelob's hide, even with like the strongest elven sword. But Shelob slamming herself into the knife was enough to pierce herself.
So it's like an anime.
Not even, he's just saying like...
No, it's very much in like the...
like a legend thing, or like
well, it's very very much like an epic or something, or like a ballad, because like
it has the balance of being also a book.
Because in Beowulf, like Grendel has terrible strength that can tear a man limb from limb, but Beowulf is able to tear off Grendel's arm, right?
Yeah.
And so there's definitely like,
and also just the Scouring of the Shire is really sad, but also I really liked it because there's these 4 little hobbits, and they basically like get all the other hobbits to fight back against big folk who've taken over the Shire. And it's I don't know, it's just really well woven together, and it doesn't end when the bad guys beat him. There's actually like quite a bit more to do, because like the world's still messed up, and he writes about the quite a bit more to do. And I kind of like that as well. And that might be like a product of him surviving World War One, because even though the book's not about World War One or Two, it definitely influenced him.
I think it's also about what you read. Like, well, I don't know if you're saying that is unique and so you like it, or if you're just, because there's a lot of books that wrap up end.
Yeah, well, like, they wrap up the end, and like they sort of wrap up, but like this thing is, all right, they've like beaten Sauron, and they go back to the Shire. It's been taken over by Saruman, and so they have to beat Saruman now. And it's like there's one small evil left that they have to beat. It's like there's actually another challenge to beat.
Yeah, and so I think it's... Yeah, I guess it's...
Like, usually after you beat the bad guy, they wrap it up, but there's no, like, nothing else.
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking about is the idea that maybe Lord of the Rings is written in a manner you like, and you have been reading books, like, it's like, let's say you read a lot of, like, Dragonlance and stuff, right? And like, a lot of Forgotten Realms books and stuff.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, yeah, these are good. But then you read, like, Brandon Sanderson, or Malazan Book of the Fallen, or Lord of the Rings, or Guy Gabriel Kay, depending on opinion.
Yeah.
Or, like, the Prince of Thorns, one of these, like, amazing literary works. Well, not necessarily literary, but Malazan Book of the Fallen, definitely, and Lord of the Rings. But the others, not so much, necessarily. And so then you realize, man, there's like a whole better way for stories to be written out there, almost. And you've been reading like this, it's not bad, but it's not great. It's like fairly run-of-the-mill, or not compared to like greatness in a way.
Yeah.
So maybe you've just discovered
I don't think so,
a
because
formula you like.
I've read, like, the Malzen and all those other books.
Yeah.
And I think, like, The Lord of the Rings is just so well written, and, like, a lot of elements of it are really good.
Yeah.
And, like, there's a reason why his work has stuck around so long. Like, the movies were really good, and that helped. But there's a reason why, like, it's stuck with people so much. Like, oh, The Lord of the Rings, like, why D&D's based off it. Like, there's reasons for these things.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's definitely one of the best works of...
Like, it's basically what made fantasy popular, like, people even trying it.
I think it's one of the... well, what he did was... there's stories that stick with us, like the Greek myths, the Egyptian myths, Beowulf, Jesus, like the Bible, all of that. And they stick with us, and he tried to emulate those stories.
Yeah.
And other people tried to emulate him. Because the groundwork you need to do something like Lord of the Rings is crazy.
Yeah.
So he tried to write a story that resonates with people in the same way as like Beowulf. I keep saying Beowulf because he was like the main translator for it or something.
Yeah.
So he was probably quite influenced by it, I assume. Given that...
He's also quite influenced by the Bible.
Yeah. Well, he was quite like a devout Christian or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just wondering about your like specific of the Scouring of the Shire being such a...
It's just, I like it because it's sort of shown, like, the hobbits are like these folk that don't want much trouble. Like, they're basically like country folk, like, oh, I don't want any trouble. And people took advantage of that. And then the hobbits come back, and they're supposed to have their rest. Like, they're supposed to go home and have their rest. And there's none of the other adventurers with them. Gandalf even leaves them to go into the forest to talk to Tom Bombadil. And so it's them by themselves, and they get there, and like, oh, drat, we still have a problem to fix. But they've faced hell, basically. Like, all of them faced hell. And so, like, Saruman and his tricks and, like, a few goblin men are nothing to them now.
It's actually quite a common thing in books, from a certain perspective. Like, Harry Potter, let's say. In Harry Potter, I think it's the 3rd book, or maybe the 6th book. Dudley is being mean to Harry or something. And then a Dementor comes and Harry saves Dudley. Something like that.
Yeah.
And Harry's, like, not afraid of Dudley anymore. He's overgrown the bully. He's able to become the hero or step up to be the adult.
Yeah, I guess so.
Previously. Because the hobbits are it's sort of a coming-of-age story, I guess, is like what...
Yeah, but it's done so much better in The Lord of the Rings. Like, that whole scene, like, the hobbits are, like, there's hobbits who are scared of the big folk. And like, oh, we can't let you through the gate. We can't let you across the bridge. And Mary's just like, what do you mean you can't let me across the bridge? I've just, like, walked through several wars, come all the way back home, walked across the whole world. You're saying not allowed to cross this bridge because there's a gate in the way. Open up this gate or I'll tear it down myself.
Yeah, and so you see that a lot in fiction. So it's because that's...
But there was no thing, like, there was no evil there before in the Shire. Like, the Shire is just fine. But now they come back and there's the evil. But the 4 of them can handle it now.
Yeah. On another layer of abstraction, though, it's overcoming evil on their own now that they've grown. And so that's not what resonates with you necessarily. It's more how well written.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing to resonate.
Yeah.
Just not unique to Lord of the Rings. So...
Well, it's kind of uniquely written.
Saying... Yeah, exactly. Uniquely written. So saying, like, why'd you like the Lord of the Rings?
Well,
Because
no,
it has a wizard in it.
Well, it's almost... It has the best wizard. It's because you're saying how wizard, but
yeah,
it's Lord of the Rings did it first, and a lot of people based their stuff off Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, because it had the best wizard. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, but it's like I just like that thing, I guess, of like people coming back and being stronger than they are. And Tolkien's like the guy who wrote that scene. Like he's like, as far as I know, he's probably like one of the first people to write that sort of scene like that in the book. So I like that scene a lot, and Tolkien wrote it well. And so when it's in other books, I'm liking Tolkien's thing that people have taken.
Well, then you're a big fan of Shakespeare if you go by that, or you're a big fan of like...
Well, no, Shakespeare isn't as good as a writer, in my opinion.
You're a big fan of Homer. You're a big fan
They're not as good as writers. Oh, no.
Shakespeare's pretty good.
He's alright.
He's pretty amazing, actually. Yeah. I don't like admitting it, but Shakespeare's pretty amazing. There's...
Touchstone is hilarious to read.
Yeah. Well, Shakespeare's like writing, it's all in iambic pentameter, which is incredibly difficult off the get-go. Each sentence has tons of multiple meanings. He's got rhymes everywhere. He's got really colorful characters. He's got a massive and incredible understanding of like human psychology. And
yeah, and
Like he's really good.
And wanna know why Touchstone's my favorite character? Because when you're reading it in a literature class, he's the easiest to read. Because Touchstone, the smarter the character, the less complicated they speak in Shakespeare's works, and Touchstone's possibly his smartest character.
Right.
And so he's really easy to read.
Yeah, Shakespeare's a good writer, and I don't know if I don't.
I also just like those scenes, like the way they were written, the scenes, like what happened with the characters. Like I just really liked it.
Yeah, it's good. I have to reread it sometime.
I'd also like recommend in a way listening to the audio production because the movie is partly based off the audio production, like the way the characters speak.
Yeah.
And the guy sings every single song, and he does a good job of singing them.
Yeah, I remember the songs when I was reading. I skipped every single song.
Yeah, no, the guy actually like sings all the songs, and he makes it interesting.
It's all in Kenyan, except not pronounced Kenyan, is it? It's Quenya or something.
No, it's not all of Elvish. Very little of the music's in Elvish.
Well, Elvish nonsense.
No, it isn't. Most of it's English.
They're weird Welsh
Although even
words.
when there's like Elvish to be sung, he actually sings the Elvish.
Most of the books are just Elvish songs, as far as I remember.
Yeah, I really like Blither.
And I remember being really confused. Boromir and Faramir and
Oh.
Éowyn and someone had a similar name to her.
Éowyn and Theoden
Yeah, Éomer.
and Éomer, yep. Oh, and if you think that's bad, so what's his name? Boromir and his father. What's his father's name? Denethor. Denethor. So before Boromir and Denethor, if you go back far enough in the house of the squires, or what they're called, not squires, but the people who watched over
The stewards?
The stewards. There's another guy called Denethor, and his son was named Boromir. And they took back Pelennor after his captured for a while. And then Boromir did the same feat as the other Boromir.
Was it Pelagir?
Pelagir, maybe.
To the south?
Not Pelagir, sorry, no, the capital of Gondor.
Oh.
Not Minas Tirith, but the city that's divided in two across the river. Can't remember his name.
Yeah, no, and they also, the different parts of the Lord of the Rings are written by different characters in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And they're actually written in a different style. And they also, like, in a different language sometimes, or translated differently, because, like, Peregrine isn't Pippin's name, but that's already two names. His actual name is, like, some, like, Elvish word or something. Because it's all translated into, maybe it's all translated into the Hobbit language or something.
No, it's the common language, the language of the West. And the Hobbits speak the language of the West in their common speech. It's just it's really accented.
And the Hobbits also have their own variant of languages. They say goblins instead of orcs and all this stuff.
And they call themselves hobbits instead of halflings.
Yeah. And so it's very confusing. There's so many words flying around and they all mean the same thing. So I remember it being very confusing to read.
It's really interesting, like, even afterwards, this is kind of not Lord of the Rings, but after the audiobooks die, I haven't finished it yet, there's the appendix the guy reads. And one of them was a letter written at the beginning of the book that explains hobbits, so you get some, like, context. The other ones are, like, abstract, like, bits taken from the Silmarillion to explain characters. And he's, like, talking about all the names of the characters. And it's like, yeah, Theoden's actually Theoden II, and the guard named Paragon was named after a king named Paragon. And, like, just goes, and it's, like, all the names, and it's, like, he actually, like, did name etymology, like, slowly changing over time. The names are similar in theme, and...
Tolkien believed that inventing a language was an art form, and he proved it as well.
Well, even just his naming is incredible, and also the history behind his naming. Like, there's a bunch of the kings, there's a king who fought the mount, I can't remember which people, but one of the people to the east. And so he changed his name to Hiramandakil, like something Mandakil.
Yeah.
And that meant he slayed a lot of those people. And then other kings would take that name if they, like, slayed a bunch of people. But then it just started becoming, like, a thing that it was just, like, the kings would take that name, even if they hadn't done the feat. And then the tradition stopped because one's like, this is stupid, and put a stop to it. And so he sort of, like, goes through the history of the naming and how it changes over time. Also, man, does Aragorn have a lot of names. He is Strider, Elfstone, Elessar, Aragon. I think there's like two others. It's a very well done book.
It's so confusing. We have to say it's well done because we don't understand it.
No, I understand it.
I think it's kind of like...
He does a really good job of explaining it in his book. Like, actually, that's one thing he does. What is it called? When you give information about the book that sort of sets the background. His characters do exposition, but they do it through storytelling. So his exposition is other characters talking to each other and like, oh, why is this thing called this? Oh, yes, well, that's an interesting history. And then he'll like discuss it for a bit. But then he stops and they just like, and they talked about long into the night. So like gives the amount he wants to give, but he doesn't give all of it. And it's like, this is a conversation they're having. Like a person would ask, oh, why is that thing called that? Or it's like, there's giant statues. And he's like, I long wish to look upon the faces of my forefathers. Standing before us is this king, these statues, like, built into whatever age. Like,
Just had to say all his.
he had to say some of it. He's like, and then he wrote the Silmarillion to say it all.
Yeah, you should read Wheel of Time next.
I'm going to possibly try to read the Silmarillion. Just get the audiobook of that.
Wheel of Time certainly has a lot to talk about stories.
But I'd say like it's exposition done well. Like a lot better than some books.
Yeah, well,
That's just Lord of the Rings. It's done well.
you've read one good book, and now you want to read others, and you'll never be able to read The Apprentice, Ranger's Apprentice again.
No, The Ranger's Apprentice is a really well-written book series.
You have to read it.
It still stands up. Like in all the series I've read, it is well-written and fun.
My favorite series of all time is the Red Queen's War, which I think is good. And there's a third trilogy out now, which I've all in.
You should definitely read The Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah, I definitely should. Because last time I read it was like 13 years ago, 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely... And also, just watching the movies, like, it's really cleared up which character's which. So I think it'll be a lot easier to read.
It's funny also, like, I've watched the movies first a lot. And it's like, oh, that was different. Oh, that was different. Oh, wow, the movies really tamed down Denethor's death. Yeesh. Like, that's actually one thing for me. Because his death in the movies is horrific. It's like one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. And it's worse in the books. And it's like, oh, okay, so they decide to make it less horrific in the movie. And I thought it was horrible.
Well, now you just can only read... There's a reason classics are classics. It surprised me, like, when I read... I don't know if I said it before, but when I read War and Peace, it's really good. Like, I was actually quite surprised. Like, I've mentioned I read it before, but I was actually surprised how good it was. Like, it's actually a good book.
And Our Mutual Friend was really well written, really hard to read.
I think War and Peace isn't too hard to read. The biggest issue is that it's written in 4 different languages.
Yeah.
3, 4, something like that. It's written in Russian, English, French, and German. Yeah, 4 languages.
Yeah.
But because they translate into English, it's only written in 3.
Was it the other book that's like War and Peace, Two Towers?
A Tale of Two Cities?
Yeah, Tale of Two Cities.
I haven't read that.
Oh, apparently that's very good. To ponder where you are and not to be lost in otherwise sounding nonsense. This is The Fool and the Philosopher.
I read some excerpts of Dostoevsky, and he's considered one of the greatest authors of all time.
Glade?
No, that was Solzhenitsyn.
Ah.
No, Dostoevsky wrote... I don't even know the name of his books for the most part. He did The Brothers Karamazov, and he did The Inquisitor of something or something. I can't remember the name of that one. But
Yeah, the classics are good.
But I read an excerpt of Dostoevsky. Here, I'll tell you the story. I'll try to tell you the story, okay? It's a little story within It's a story within a story. Really good. Okay, so it's like during the Spanish Inquisition.
Yep.
The story does... What happened is one of the characters is asking his older brother something, and he's like, I'll tell you a story, is basically what happens, as far as I understand.
Oh, so Nishan's the guy who talks about, like, the different characters or try to talk about the Inquisition?
No.
No?
Solzhenitsyn is the Gulag Archipelago.
Sorry, the other guy you're talking about.
Dostoevsky is the guy who... he also wrote Crime and Punishment.
Yeah.
Which is a story about someone committing a completely logical murder and then being destroyed by it.
Yeah.
But this is a story within there. So he just explores a lot of aspects of human psychology and mind and stuff. So it's during the Spanish Inquisition, this story, not when it was written. Okay. And there is a figure walking through the crowds. And people, like, when they touch him, their heart feels lifted and they are suddenly, all their stress goes away, or they're lifted, or like burst down crying, and they see their whole life and they reconfigure it. Or there was a blind man and he touches him and the scales fall from his eyes, as it said. He can see. There's like, that's just the biblical expression for some reason, translated in the King James Bible anyways.
Yeah.
There's this, this old man who's like got pain in his joints, and he touches this man and suddenly he's healed. Stop touching me! And this man's just walking through the crowds and they park before him and he's smiling as he reaches out.
And there's a guy with the phobia of being touched, and he reaches out and touches him and cures him of his phobia of being touched.
and he's smiling, and people look upon his smile and they feel like calm and peace, and they know everything's going to be all right. And no one can stand before him. Like even the biggest, angriest guy just moves out of his way because he's just so wonderful. And so along comes this 90-year-old man, the the Grand Inquisitor, and he walks up to him and he says, "Take him away!" And his Inquisitors swarm the man and pull him away into a prison cell.
That was unexpected.
And then that night, the Grand Inquisitor visits the man and he says, "I don't know if you're really him." And the idea is Jesus, obviously.
Yeah.
And he says, "I don't know if you're really him, but you are going to burn tomorrow." And then the guy says, the Inquisitor then felt like he had to explain himself to the figure he had in there. So he says, "Look, in the Bible you say people had to go into the wilderness and eat roots and berries and survive and struggle against the land, and only then can they go to heaven and be brought to heaven. But that's only the strongest of men that can succeed there. And I was one of those strong men, and I followed your teachings, and I struggled in the wilderness and ate roots with the others. And I was great and strong, and I was going to go to heaven. And I thought, but then we're abandoning the weak. And so I have to go and protect the weak. And so I have to go and fix your work. I have to change it right and protect the weak, because you will not protect the weak. So I am doing greater than you, basically. I have to go out and save them." And he says, and so
you're messing everything up right now. We have order.
Well, that's basically what he says. And he says, like, you're going to burn tomorrow because you can't change things. You'll ruin it all. I'm trying to protect these people from themselves. They don't want to be enlightened. They don't want to deal with the fear of life. They want to be protected. They want the safe restriction. Like, they don't want freedom. They want to be safe. And I'm keeping them safe. And surely you understand. And so you'll burn tomorrow. And this is like the thing that's like the genius part of the story, I think. Like where it goes. So then the figure in the cell walks over to the old 90-year-old Inquisitor, kisses him on the lips, and the Inquisitor crying and breaks down. He opens the prison cell and he says, "Get out of here, never return. You can never return, you hear me?" And that's the story.
Well, I know that story.
You do?
Yes.
Oh.
Because Jordan Peterson talks about a lot in 12 Rules for Life.
Oh.
And he talks about that writer quite a bit. And what the book is about is the two brothers basically are constantly arguing over stories and trying to like prove points. And I've heard like the version slightly differently though. Yeah. Which is after he does that, the Inquisitor just like breaks down, then gets up and leaves the cell. Yeah. But he leaves the door open. Right. And so the figure can walk out.
But it's very
very compelling story.
It's like, because you think, because there's that, I don't know, it's something I've said, like, if Jesus came back, the Inquisition would have killed him, kind of thing. Yeah. And so that's where you think the story's going, but then it's like, Jesus is so pure in this story that it's brilliant. Like, this isn't like pro-Jesus, although, if you're not pro-Jesus, I mean. Yeah. And I'm not saying it as a religious aspect, it's just, he was a pretty awesome guy.
Yeah, and I've talked with some people who are atheists. Yeah. And they're saying, like, just the stories about Jesus, like
I consider myself atheist in like one definition.
Yeah, sure. But like people talk about like Jesus or talk about him, and he's like, "Yeah, I really disagree with a lot of the Bible." So like they'll say that. Yeah. But the stuff about Jesus is pretty good. Or like Jesus was awesome.
Yeah, he's such a cool guy. Yeah. He's like so smart too. Like so insanely smart. I said it the other day. The story where
he chases the tax collectors out of the church.
Plus the Pharisees whoever the Pharisees are, I'm not even sure, come to him and they're trying to trick him because they want to either get him on account of like breaking the law or breaking religion. Yeah. And so they can kill him either way, basically. And they're like, so it says you should give tribute to Caesar. What do you say? And he says, "Where is your tribute for Caesar?" And so they bring him a penny. And he says, "Whose face is on that penny?" Caesar's. And Jesus says, "Render unto Caesar's which is Caesar's, render unto God which is God's." And so it's like, so he's not worshipped, because if you give your tribute to Caesar, then you're not worshipping God as the highest. But if you give God all your worship, then Caesar, your ruler, doesn't get it to you. So it's like a trap. Jesus is trapped either way. But then he just says, like, Caesar wants the earthly worship, God wants the heavenly worship, basically. Like, it's just, it's brilliant. Actually, and there's another one. There's one I don't get, like, where he goes to dinner with some of them, with some lawyers and stuff, and sits down, and they're like, "You didn't wash your hands." And he goes into this big rant. He's like, "How dare you?" It's basically like, you asked me to wash my hands when you don't even know the reason for washing your hands. You just follow the books when there's like and so maybe it's like, okay, so here's a joke, right? So there's Canadian Mounties and...
Sorry, I'm just recovering from that whiplash.
So, no, this is related. Yeah. So Canadian Mountie and American Marine, like, or something like that, let's say, they're at some event together for some reason, and they both go to the bathroom at the same time, both have to go pee, go to the urinal, both pee, and they come out, and the Marine's like, you didn't wash your hands. Canadian Mountie, he's like, so? And he's like, and the Marine's like, the United States Marines, they teach us to wash our hands. And the Mountie's like, Canadian RCMP, teach us not to pee on our hands.
Actually, I guess Jesus wouldn't need to wash his hands, would he?
Well, I think it's more, you say, like, you have to wash your hands, you have to brush your teeth, this sort of thing, and it's, like, ingrained in you, right?
Yeah.
But the reason you do it is to stay clean. So if you're already clean, you don't need to wash your hands.
Yeah, well, I don't think Jesus would need to wash his hands as well.
But even if Jesus did, like, I don't think he's, like, I think the magical aspect of him is just representing his thought process almost. Like, it's saying, like, if you think this way, then you have the powers of God. And,
yeah, but I mean, the guy can, like, cure leprosy by touching people, so, like, bacteria probably on his hand, like, just float away.
I think, like, in the time, diseases of the mind were, like, impossible to express, so they were represented as diseases of the world and the body. And so you would have Jesus curing his mind would be that nothing bad could exist around him. So Jesus being pure of mind meant that anything around him was also pure, I think.
Yeah.
Is probably the idea. I'm not sure.
Oh man. Wow, Aragorn has a lot of aspects of Jesus, and so does Gandalf the White, actually.
Yeah, well, I think Gandalf just in general does.
Yeah, but I mean, even Aragorn, like, the hands of the king are the hands of a healer.
Yeah.
Is a line, and, like, Aragorn's, like, leading
It's a bit weird because
over
he's a
people.
ranger, not a paladin.
But Aragorn's, like, leaning over people and, like, telling them come back. Like, he says their name to call them back from the darkness of the Black Breath.
Yeah.
And then he, like, performs healing on them. And he's like, I've healed their mind, but their body is still badly. Or with another person's like, I've healed her body, but I do not know if her mind will recover. And if it does not, she will die because her heart is cold. And it's kind of, I've done, like, all I can here.
So, yeah, speaking of, like, great literature and stuff. So in my writing class at UVic,
Yeah.
they said we weren't allowed to use fantasy. And everyone was, like, in this uproar for, like, an entire class. Like, you can't write fantasy. You can't write fantasy. Everyone was in uproar for the entire class. And he said, okay, fine, you're allowed, like, one orc. That's my rule, one orc. You can have, like, a lightsaber. You can have an orc. You can have, like, one spell. But that's it. You're only allowed one fantastical element. Because any great story should be able to be written in our world. It shouldn't need a fantastic element. So, right? Here's my thought on this, okay?
Yeah.
Imagine a story where, you know the Nuremberg trials?
Yeah.
Where all the Nazis were persecuted for, like, all the horrible atrocities they did. And the most common defense heard was, I'm just following orders, right?
Yeah.
Now imagine if Hitler didn't exist. Imagine if there was a recording playing in, like, a room or speakers or something, and Nazis were listening to that recording and following its orders exactly.
Yeah.
And so they were just following orders, but those orders never existed. No one was even reinforcing the orders. No one cared if they followed the orders. It was just some weird recording on the desk. Let's say it was from a book, from a movie. It was just someone had, like, procedurally generated sound and people were obeying it absolutely and committing atrocities. Instead of just following orders. But there was no orders to begin with. That's, like, I don't know what that is, but that's quite a powerful idea, I think. Like, I was just following orders, but your orders nobody wanted you to do this, and you did it anyways. Why would you do something nobody wanted you to do?
It's just like a little tape recorder that's running noise and has, like, a little toothbrush mustache on it.
And so nobody wants you to do this. You're just so actually what you're doing is what you want to do, or you're doing what you think you should do, because there's no one that wants you to do this thing.
Yeah.
And so that would be an interesting short story, I think, something like that. Okay, so that tells you, like, even with no authority, people might follow orders. There's a lesson in there. There's something mysterious, something. So I could write that for my class, and he'd be happy.
Yeah.
All right. Let's say I took my Victoria writing class in the year 1000. Tape recorders don't exist.
Yeah.
How do I write that story?
There's a goblin on a shelf.
Yes, but a story should be able to work with no fantastic elements.
Wind game blown over a bottle.
So you can stretch it, of course. Yeah. You could say, like, a king's voice from a neighboring kingdom is carried on the wind or something.
Yeah.
You can stretch it. But the fantastic often goes where we haven't yet. It represents what does not yet exist. It can explore ideas because the whole point of mythology, according to, like Jordan Peterson's Maps of Meaning, right? The whole point of mythology is to help you explore the unknown. Yeah. If you're writing about what exists, you're not exploring the unknown. And so you're being afraid of the unknown, restricting yourself, and therefore you're evil. Because if you voluntarily decide to not look for meaning in things, then you're evil. Pure evil.
Also, I don't think The Lord of the Rings is going to be written with those fantasy elements.
Yeah.
And I think, like, this is my own personal opinion.
Actually, I think Lord of the Rings might have been, but
I don't think it would be.
But okay, keep going anyways.
But anyways, I think Lord of the Rings is, like, one...
Actually, no, I don't think it could, and I'll say why in a moment.
The more important pieces of literature. And why I say that is, for one, it established fantasy. It created a bunch of things that are fantasy related, like D&D and stuff. But also, like, just showed people, like there is a different worlds you can make up. There's different ideas, like bringing the idea of like purity and light really well written, and it's just like such a well written story that I don't think Earth would be like quite the same without it. Like it's almost one of those things like it's kind of like a great work almost.
No, it is. It's well done. So yeah, actually, so I don't think Lord of the Rings could be written without fantasy. And here's why. If you write a story about how to act when someone steals from you, or when someone like doesn't pay back on the mortgage, or when someone shoots you in the head, if you write a story about how to react, sure, they have no fantasy and they're about an interesting conflict. In Lord of the Rings, what you have is Sauron. Sauron is not paying your mortgage. Sauron is getting stolen from. Sauron is getting shot in the head. Sauron is your dog dying. Sauron is you stealing from your brother. Sauron is you lying. Sauron is evil. Sauron is pure evil. Lord of the Rings is how to deal with evil. Not a specific case. Evil. All evil. This is how you deal with evil. You fight it. You face it. You don't run away.
Even if you can't win, you fight it.
So if you write a story like this without fantasy, this is why fantasy is so important. This is why mythology is so important in religion. You can't write that story without abstraction. Because evil doesn't exist as... Well, okay, evil does exist as this nebulous blob, but you can't write about that without fantasy.
Yeah.
And fantasy is real in that sense then. Fantasy tells you how to be. So they want you to run from reality. This Vic, they want
this teacher of yours that you hate.
Now, there's also a point where you have to learn the rules before you can break them, common thing. And so maybe that's what they're trying to give them. I don't want to like slander them, right? Like sometimes you have to learn the rules before you break them. But I do think that they were...
What would one orc do? You need like at least a horde of orcs for it to do anything.
Which was a very big orc.
That's not a proper orc. That's like just a big green man.
Well, there's like Guy Gabriel Vasquez. Like he would have been great in that class. Like he wrote The Very Old Man with Very Long Wings, which is the story of an angel that like crashes onto a beach.
Yeah.
So like you could and has miracles, but the miracles suck. Like someone like has can't remember they have like leprosy or something, and he makes flowers grow on their head, and But it's a funny story. There's only one magical element in that story.
Yeah.
But so I don't think they... And so in my story, Golems, obviously, kind of spoiler for the book, but it's probably not a risk.
We'll see about that.
So Lord Glove, all of his orders to do all the horrible stuff he's doing to conquer everything and unite the kingdoms, he thinks he's listening to a guy named King Otto.
And he's listening to a tape recorder with a...
He's listening to basically...
A tape recorder with a toothbrush mustache.
He's basically listening to a magical rune that tells him what he thinks he should hear. And so he is acting on his own initiative to do all this stuff. It's tricking him into acting on his own initiative. And so there's no one to blame for what he's doing but himself. Like, it's... So,
but isn't his whole life I'm following orders because that's what I do?
Yeah, except he's not. He's listening to him. He's listening to what he thinks King Otto wants to say, what King Otto is saying.
Ugh.
So, because King Otto isn't there.
He's like on some beach somewhere.
Sort of, yeah.
Colada.
He wanders the lands. Yeah.
King Otto just set up a rune box. All right, that'll do. It'll make people hear what they want to hear. My kingdom's taken care of. I'm off.
Don't want to spoil too much for people that haven't read it yet, though. So. Can help. I'll leave it there for now. But yeah, so it's definitely like a...
Also, you couldn't have the One Ring without fantasy.
You can, but you have to...
No, you can't.
The ultimate appeal of like power, like it's hard to represent. The problem...
What would the One Ring be if it wasn't magical?
Well, what you have is knowledge. So you have this thing that corrupts you absolutely. It's very powerful, like rationality, science. If you go pure science and rationality, you become insanely powerful, but you lose all morality and use the power to like... With good purposes,
is it a USB stick?
You develop a nuke. No, it's pure rationality. You develop a nuke, and then you destroy and you fight things because you want to end war. And so you use the nuke, and then you build armies and you cure diseases. You eliminate religion because it causes issues.
But it's one little thing concentrated.
Yeah, just one little idea, rationality, tiny idea. Just what if everything had to be proved?
But
it's very small.
How can you cast that into a fiery mountain?
You can't. It's indestructible. The only way to destroy it is to go back to where it was forged. In the mind that thought of it, you have to say, wait, is this the right path? You have to think, okay, rationality is there, but what else is there? What can we reforge this into something else? Can we dissolve the elements of the One Ring of rationality into... Rationality can advance our science, but we need emotion, we need heart, we need emotion, we need spirit. I sound very flaky, but...
Yeah, no, but I think it needs fantasy element.
It doesn't, but the fantasy allows it to be... When you abstract something in fantasy, it becomes more real and more obvious. Stories without fantasy are actually less real. because you can't abstract the ideas finally, right? Because the One Ring is rationality, but it's also like the corruption of invincibility, let's say, or the corruption of ultimate power. Like if you're like the president or like the king, then like the ring is the corruption of power.
Yeah.
So the ring is many corruptions, and the ring is also, but so it's easier to comprehend because you can say this story about the corrupt king is a story about all forms of corruption, and it is. But because it's about the corrupt king, you only think it's about the corrupt king, whereas if it's about the One Ring, it's much wider because there's no One Ring, so it must be about something else.
I mean, also the story is called the story of Frodo Nine Fingers and the Ring of Doom.
Yeah, it's not a great title.
Well, they changed the names with their many variations until it's Lord of the Rings. We wrote it. And now for something different than was being talked about before on The Fool and the Philosopher.
So let's switch to something that's simpler than like literature now for a moment, like the meaning of life. So I had some issues the other day of life lost all meaning, and it's done that before. But I thought I had it like figured out, and it was gone. And I was like, man,
life has no meaning.
I was like panicking. I was depressed. I was panicking. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. Because if there's no meaning, what's the point of staying alive? What's the point of doing anything? Like, you might as well just like stop breathing. Like, if life has no meaning, so it's scary. And the only thing keeping me going was the thought I once thought life had meaning, so I can get there again. Or maybe, but I was wrong in my thought. But maybe there's another path because other people life has. So then what I did, I have this thing where I like argue with myself. I've tried to start it as most powerfully as I can, like Tyler Durden in Fight Club, where he has another aspect of himself tries to beat him up in like an argument. So mine isn't like an image of myself, it's Saruman, because he has a compelling voice. So I have to defeat a voice of compelling. So I said,
so you have to defeat, what's his name?
Christopher Lee.
You have to defeat Christopher Lee in a mental battle.
Yeah, in a mental battle, yeah. So I went, life has no meaning. And he went, "Ooh." And I was like, well, there's no God. So I was like, life, and then he's like, but you can't prove life has meaning. It's like, it can't prove that life has meaning either. That's true.
That's true.
That's true. So it was just sort of like
following the trail of two young hobbits. Wait, no, I'm gonna have to wait now.
So I couldn't prove that life had meaning, and I couldn't prove it didn't have meaning. I didn't know where that left me. And
gotcha.
And so so yesterday, and it was a lot more complex than that, and I was like, well, that's enough to keep living at least. It's not enough to enjoy life, but it's enough to keep living, let's say. And this is another thing, just as an aside. I found out that like absence of pain isn't enough. Like you need happiness, or not happiness, you need joy, you need something. It doesn't have to be happiness, it doesn't have to be joy, you need something though. I would trade, if I had zero happiness and zero pain, let's call it happiness and pain just for simplicity. If I had zero happiness and zero pain, I'd be like, and someone would be like, hey, plus 10 pain for plus 1 happiness, I'd be like, deal.
Yep.
Because you need, like, the happiness is all that matters.
That's actually proven.
Yeah. The thing about pain is it tends to make happiness difficult, but if you guarantee plus 10 pain, plus 1 happiness, easy deal.
Well, there's a psychological experiment that was done.
Yeah.
Which is, so there's a machine.
Every time you touch it, it cuts off a finger and gives you a marshmallow.
No. There's a machine. It has a button on it.
Yeah.
The button's made of copper. When you press the button, it shocks you.
Yeah.
And it hits you on the finger, so it'll go into your finger bone, and there's nerves there. It hurts a lot.
Yeah.
And so what the experiment is you get someone, and you say, can you press this button for me? And they press it, they don't know what it is, and it hurts them. And it really hurts.
Yeah.
And you ask them, do you think you'll ever press that button again?
Yeah.
And they'll probably say no.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, I have to go do, like you're saying, like, let's do a psychological assessment, then that's like a part of it. And you're like, all right, I have to go do some paperwork, just wait here in this room.
Yeah.
Leave the room, close the door, leave them with the machine.
Yeah.
There's nothing else in the room but that machine and them. On it, like, usually they press the button again.
Yeah, because it's
and they might press it several times. Like,
entertainment.
Yeah, like you can watch videos of them and they're sort of like, do you want to press it again? Like, it wasn't that bad. Like, you sort of see it go through your head, like, do you want to press it again? It wasn't that bad. Maybe. I don't know if I should. And I'm like, okay, yep, certainly reach over, press it, ow. And then they sort of like giggle to themselves a little bit because like, oh yeah, that does hurt. Why did I press it again? I'm such an idiot. Or they're just like, ah. And then like they try to like press it a little less and it still shocks them the same amount. So.
Yeah, this Christmas I went over to a friend's house and just played some Settlers of Catan. Like, I don't even like that game that much. But played some Settlers of Catan, and afterwards, just like everything went right that night for whatever reason. And afterwards, I was like walking home and I was thinking, holy cow, like every bit of misery and pain I've had up to this point is worth nothing compared to that
Game of Settlers of Catan.
to that joy experience there. Like that small 3 hours of Settlers of Catan or whatever, and plus other stuff, was that made up infinite times for every bit of pain. It's that is worth it 100%. And so that's just a little aside, that whole thing. So yeah, back to meaning. So yesterday or 2 days ago, I had this thought, or I was reading Maps of Meaning, Jordan Peterson, which is about having meaning.
Yeah.
And that was part of the thing that brought about the crisis, because Nietzsche, the jerk, is the most, I would never want to have an argument with him because he would destroy you with logic. He's terrifying. He's absolutely terrifying. So he said Kant's categorical imperative that we talked about before, where it's you have to be rational and do good, and you have to not treat anything as a means to an end. And Kant said it's not imperative, and because you have the choice to do it or not.
Nietzsche said.
Yeah, sorry, Nietzsche said it's not an imperative. He said it's not imperative as old Kant would have it, because you have the choice to do it or not.
Yeah, but
And it's just destroyed the meaning of life, Nietzsche.
Nietzsche's a little bit of a pessimist.
No, he's amazing.
He's a bit of a downer.
He's not though. He's because you have to see where people can go if you want to bring them out of it. You have to go there first.
Isn't he?
You have to descend into the other world before you can bring the person out.
Isn't Nietzsche said God is dead, we killed him?
Yeah.
And so we must become God ourselves? We must have our morality, we must judge for ourselves now?
Not quite.
But that's sort of the idea is
So he wrote a story about this man with a torch and a lantern with no light in it or something. There's a blind man. He's like, what are you looking for? I'm looking for God. What? There is no God. God is dead, and we have killed him. We'll never wash the blood from our hands. That's the most important part. God is dead, and we have killed him? No, we shall never wash the blood from our hands. He said, you've gutted morality. And once you eliminate God, what is morality based upon? If there is no God, then where is meaning? Where is morality? Why are you doing it? And he said, modern rational minds have destroyed themselves. And he actually said, there's going to be a time where this emptiness will lead to people desperately clinging to ideals. And I should like to see a time where these ideals come to fruition and cause these great wars, basically. And then communism and World War I and II happened, and he's so here's the thing, right? So it was Wolfgang Pauli that helped me through this, the physicist. And he has this idea called hidden variables, which is basically that, as I understand it, we are observing the universe, and we're observing the output of the universe, but we have no idea how it's actually made. We just our rules of physics and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. It's just it's like if a hologram on a television, the characters on the TV were calculating physics based on what happened on the TV. They have no idea how a projector works.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of Wolfgang's thing, is hidden variables. We are looking at visible variables that are actually created by hidden ones, but they still exist. And I was talking to my dad about our dad, and I always forget he's insanely smart. And yeah, is that a compliment?
No, it's unfortunate.
He's very good at hiding it.
Yeah. Actually.
But he was he took an honors in physics and stuff. So I was discussing all these physicists I was reading about, and he's like, oh, that guy, he did this theorem, this guy did that theorem, this guy did that theorem. And I was like, you know all these? And he's and then I was talking about hidden variables, and I've always had this image, I think I talked about before, of extra dimensions, 4-dimension. You have a horseshoe poking through paper. And so these two independent points are actually connected. And what he said was hand reaching through water, and you see the fingers. I was man, that's way better. Because the fingers also move independently, even more so. Yeah. And it's still connected. And so you could say the thought of a bumblebee and a bumblebee are actually connected as one thing. That's not necessarily true. It's just you could say that with the movement of the which is Jung's idea of synchronicity. But so anyways, what that leads me to is reality is subjective because you can only observe what you can see, right? You can't actually prove anything is real, or anything is solid. So reality is subjective. So this means that all of reality is subjective. The only world I know is from my subjective experience, personally, right? Which means that all reality is subjective to me. It's only as I perceive it. It's the whole
innovative subservient.
I wonder if I see a different color blue than you. That question.
Yeah.
It's that thing. Which means that subjective meaning, what I want and need, water, and I enjoy making board games and playing video games, let's say.
Yeah.
My subjective meaning, because experiences itself is subjective, is what I want and need actually matters. That is what matters. That is meaning, is what you subjectively want and need. You don't need a rational meaning for every person that they're united under, right? You don't need a divine overall meaning. You just need your own meaning because reality is subjective. Now, this idea can lead moral relativism.
Joker?
Like Joker, or like, what are those people called?
Nihilists?
No, not nihilism necessarily. That philosophy that I talked about, empiricism versus, I talked about it, like modern, what's it, modern art kind of thing? What's that called? Those people destroying society right now.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Well, destroying themselves more and bringing everyone down with them. Moral relativism. There it is. Moral relativist, maybe.
No. It's the thing that Romney sounds like he's arguing in favor of, but he's actually against.
Yeah. Dang it, why isn't it there? Oh well. Anyways, moral relativism, that's one way to speak. So this can lead to moral relativism, where you think, well, my view is the only correct one. Or the only view that matters is mine because everything's subjective. Therefore, I should enforce my view on everything. It's like modern or something. But anyways, so my view is subjective, therefore it is the only view. Or it's the only view that matters because everything's subjective. So my meaning I can push onto everything. So it can lead to that. Like it can lead to like this sort of like
Only what I observe.
yeah, or like solipsism, where you think you are the only thing that matters. And so you can. So here's the second part to this idea, which is not important for finding meaning, but it's important for existing as a human being. Your view is necessarily incomplete because you don't know everything. So you still must be willing to listen to others and be subject to wise counsel.
Yeah.
At the very least. So that maps of meaning is basically about that like finding your own view and listening to the wise counsel, and like it's basically you have to expand the borders of experience, go past what everyone's already done.
Yeah.
And like go into chaos and separate the unknown from the known, and like describe the known and find the unknown, and be willing to reconfigure everything, which is basically identical to what we've said about walking the infinite stair and everything.
Yeah.
Like it's very similar, his book actually, what we've already talked about, which I find fascinating.
Well, we were also influenced by his work.
I don't know, like
I've listened to a lot of his lectures.
Even I don't think his lectures go into it as much though. They talk more about like, because this is like the process, right? Like the process of because it's the process, not what you do in the end. Like I can say that meaning is playing video games. Let's say I like video games. Meaning is subjective. Meaning is playing video games, but it's not. It's discovering what I like. It's separating and evaluating, reevaluating. Going, that is the true meaning. And at the end of the infinite stair is the ultimate sandwich, which is like the ultimate meaning. But you can't, which is why you have to hold the ultimate sandwich as the highest ideal. Because if I say that video games are the highest meaning, and then I grow bored of video games, life suddenly has no more meaning.
Yeah.
And then I have to desperately find new video games, play new video games, keep meaning in my life, which terrible. So you need the ultimate truth. Literally the ultimate truth, what some people call God, and that's why there's this worship of God. And so it's weird, like I say, like atheist, it's just hard to express. But you need to worship God. I think Jesus existed as a concept at the very least, and there will be a second coming of Christ, because the second coming is when people start acting like Jesus. Because once you realize what Jesus realized, which I'm not saying I do, and I don't think I do, but once you realize that, you can actually answer any question.
Yeah.
You have all knowledge in a way, because you don't necessarily know the answer, but you know how to get to the answer. That's why Jesus seemed to be like so clever and avoid everything. It's because he knew the spirit of the law, not the rule of the law.
Yeah.
And so imagine if everyone on earth did that, where they you're like, I don't kill because like I know the spirit of the law, which is like this, instead of like because it's the law, of course I don't kill. If everyone was like that, that would be like the second coming of Christ. You would have everyone being Christ. That would be like a million comings of Christ. And that's sort of like the world, the dream world.
That might even be what the second coming of Christ is described as. Interpreted as people become Christ.
Well, actually, that's the first. That's Christ dying. That is people. Like he redeemed humanity, he redeemed original sin. Everyone has Christ within them now. Everyone can enter the spirit. So the kingdom of heaven, right, was this Jewish idea of like a place like Israel or like wherever, and they went from place to place and got kicked out all the time. And then Jesus finally said to everyone, Paradise, the kingdom of heaven, is in your mind. It's not.
Glory is yours, now and forever.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's in your mind. It's not a place. You can go to heaven. You just have to think, basically. Yeah. Like your spirit has to be aligned with heaven, or like, and so that means like hell. Like if you don't worship God, you'll go to hell. That's very literal. If you worship video games, then when video games stop meaning, life will have no meaning, and then you will go to hell because your life will be unbearable. Yeah. So if you don't worship God, you go to hell. Like that is what that means.
Yeah, there are many roads to hell.
But that's what that means. And
that's actually.
And so it's like everyone's just looking at the finger instead of eating the sandwich, man.
Yeah.
They need the divine sponge to cleanse away the evil of the finger.
Well, there's an interesting thing, which when you're talking about all this, I was thinking about this several times, and you're the one who originally said this to me, which is the statement, praise Buddha.
Yeah.
Which is, when you're talking,
Everything is going as it should be.
yeah, when you're talking about like, oh no, like there's no meaning, but like my life, I had meaning before.
Yeah.
What's been getting me through like the exams and these projects and doing all this stuff and like not getting the marks I like, oh, I thought I should get or want.
Yeah.
Is that statement. But actually, where it's like, oh shoot, I was late, like I didn't make it to this thing on time. It's a very, very relaxing thing.
It is. It's
not even
relaxing.
it's just like accepting.
It's like, you know what it means? Like, you're late, right? You know what that means? When you say praise Buddha. I just thought of this right now. It's this insight, I have to say it before. You arrive and you're like, praise Buddha. That means your ultimate meaning isn't being on time. Your ultimate meaning is the ultimate truth. Like, you don't care. Like, if being on time was all that mattered, when you're late, your life crumbles. You have no meaning. You go to hell. But if you're just like, praise Buddha, you're like, oh yeah, I don't care about that. There's something greater. Something. Yeah. There's always something greater than myself.
It is as it should be.
It's my older brother.
I shall make him suffer.
There's actually
It is just like the whole like being late, like praise Buddha, or even like I can't remember what it was, but it was basically our dad was telling me that like the course you're in is kind of useless.
Yeah.
And he said that as initial thing, then he like said some other stuff afterwards.
I'm not in any.
No, me, the course I'm in.
Oh, I see.
He told me like, but you are learning how to learn and to critically think and do that stuff.
Yeah.
And that was really consoling.
Yeah.
By the time I was like quite upset, and I was just like, yeah, but praise Buddha.
Praise Buddha.
I was thinking like, yeah, okay, I'm like this course doesn't have use as far as I can see it.
All right, Mr. Physicist. Oh!
But yeah, no, he actually said that.
Oh.
He already did that self-burn to himself.
Okay. Yeah. It's amazing how many people don't use their degree.
Yeah. But it's just very interesting that I was like upset, and I was just like, why am I upset? And
you know how
I've just been doing this. Okay, yeah, I'm done.
You know how he became a programmer, as I understand it? Like, he, like, did his university, got a physics, and then, like, couldn't find any physics jobs, did, like, a little bit of working for, like, on, like, nuclear submarine detection or something like that. And then he, like, went to Hawaii on a holiday, and, like, while he was on the holiday, read a book on programming, and then just became a programmer.
Really?
Yeah, something like that. Like,
because, like, lately he's been doing a project.
Like, that was all his... It took him, like, 2 weeks to get into his job, basically.
Lately he's been doing, contracts for people.
More, of course, yeah.
And one of the contracts was he had to, like, learn a new programming language.
Yeah.
And so he learned it while doing the contract, and he's like, oh, it's a really interesting programming language. And it's like he's learned a new programming language to work with for making systems now.
Yeah. I've never seen someone so brilliant with computers. Like, there's another very common. His ears must be burning. I should, like...
No, it is actually...
Dad gossip.
Absolutely bizarre. So the IT department at the school, like I know some of the people in it, and one of them was like my friend's mother.
Yeah.
And she will just have like so much problems with computers, and she's a part of the IT department, and he just has to fix it for her. Or like as like, having some problems with my computer, wasn't connecting to the internet. And so I was like, ask this guy, all right, how can I fix this? Like, oh, you have to do the blah, 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 blah. So, what? You have to do the blah, 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 blah. What? And he's like, show me what to do. And I was like, all right, so I had to click this button to open up, like I had to click on the internet bar thing, then go into the options and change this file. Yeah, you had to do the blah, 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 blah. What? And then that guy was having problems with computers later on.
Well, that's because, see, what these people are, right? The IT people, is they are the priests that have memorized the Bible. Whereas, like, millennials and younger are Jesus who just knows how computers work. They don't need to memorize all this stuff because they understand computers. And that's more of an example for Jesus. Like, Jesus might not know everything that the priests know, but he knows when they're wrong and when they're right and how to get there. Yeah. Because he actually understands the underlying principles of morality and truth, which is like, you have to like praise Buddha. Jesus 2019.
I think Jesus and Buddha would have gone.
I think Buddha was more human. But Buddha is interesting because Buddha, there's a picture of Buddha called it's called like the eternal reawakening of Buddha or something, or like it's like that's like, you know, like when you drag a window on a computer and it goes all like and you get like a million of them. It's basically someone grabbed Buddha and did that with him, and it's like Buddha just reincarnates infinite times. And that's like the second coming of Jesus every time. That's like people understanding, like, we need to walk the stair, we need to chase the Balrog, bite at its heel. We have to we have to purify the corrupted knowledge. We have to separate the chaos of darkness from the fire of the Balrog, and
I like Buddhism.
dry the slime with a sponge of eternity.
But I like Zen Buddhism more than Buddhism.
Oh yeah.
And
Zen Buddhism's brilliant.
Zen is brilliant and bizarre. It's not like any other religion I've ever encountered.
It's like Christianity, believe it or not.
Okay.
Like reading Maps of Meaning, he doesn't say it, but he says all this stuff. He's like, only Christianity has this, only Christianity has this, right?
Mm.
And I'm like, so one of the things is like, when you learn enough in alchemy and in Christianity, like as Christ, you learn that your experience is like, and this is a difficult concept, I'm not going to explain it very well, but I kind of understand it, I think, so I don't even understand it fully, but I kind of get it. Like, what you experience, like when you are experiencing, that is the same as the world experience. Because the world is subjective, and also you are live in a social world, and so when you expand the boundaries of yourself, you expand the boundaries of the world. Which means if you fix yourself, you fix the world. Because you're redeeming yourself, you are learning more, and you are stretching the world's experience as well.
Yeah.
And so in Zen, there's a koan which is a Zen Buddhist whacks a table and a cat runs away. He said everything is one.
Yeah.
That's the same lesson, and and
I get, yeah.
There's a lot like that, like reading Maps of Meaning where he's like, only Christianity does this. I think of like a Zen koan or something. I'm like, wait, no, Zen Buddhists did it as well. It's really interesting.
A really interesting thing as well as Zen Buddhism, which is the Laughing Buddha.
Yeah.
And the Laughing Buddha comes out of Zen Buddha.
Yeah.
It's not from the original Buddha. And what the Laughing Buddha is the Japanese had a god of fortune, which was a golden fat guy who's always laughing. And so it's sort of the merging of like Japan's sort of religion changing to the Zen. Like they still have their old one, but sort of changed to Zen, and they kept this one guy, like the guy of good fortune. And however, if you read some of the stories, like the few that actually talk about Laughing Buddha, he was a guy like Jesus or Siddhartha.
Yeah.
Like he's a guy who wandered about Japan at some period, spreading enlightenment, even though like Zen Buddhism had been there for a while. However, he's very different than them because it's not like, oh, it's the Laughing Buddha, like it's a happy fat guy who's a beggar. But he's a fat beggar.
Yeah, it's a bit of a contradiction.
Yeah, it's a bit of a contradiction. He's a fat beggar who knows everything.
Although actually Christ is like that too, because he's the Alpha and the Omega. He's the beginning and the end. He's opposites united into knowledge.
Yeah.
Like, so.
Yeah, but it's the fat beggar who's always happy, so it's also a happy beggar. And so, like the stories about him, one of them is like there's these people walking, and by the road there's the Laughing Buddha.
Yeah.
And they see him there, and they've like heard about this guy who brings knowledge, and they ask him for like the wisdom of life, and he just starts laughing, like holding his belly, and they just like stare at him in confusement because all he's doing is laughing. He's not answering their question. He's meant to be really wise, and they just stand there for hours watching him laugh, waiting for him to stop. And eventually he stops and lifts up his bowl to them and smiles, and they put some coins in it, like maybe we have to pay him to get the knowledge. Then he gets up and walks off down the road, and they're just like, what the heck? And that's the story. Like,
that actually that felt like it was, like, there's a tickling of it making sense there for a moment. I was like, I kind of see where he's going. Like, I kind of get that. Like, because it's like the meaning is subjective, and you're just laughing because it's like, he's just laughter. It's like praise Buddha, you know? It's like, just laugh.
Yeah, but it's like, there's not really stories about him, however, he's such an iconic thing, the Laughing Buddha. It's like, rub the Buddha's belly.
Yeah, no, I think Zen Buddhism has some really cool stuff. Like, I talked about, did I talk about it on, like, Goldalasher Bach in this podcast? I think I have.
Yeah.
And how he proves that there's truths that are inexpressible. Yeah. And in Zen Buddhism, there's a story where someone asks a question like, it was something like, Master, what's the meaning of life? Something like that. Some different question, maybe. And the Master said, mu. And mu means nothing, but in a different way, it also means undo that, or it means unsay that.
Yeah, I think you've talked about this. Yeah.
And so, like, there's all this revelations that are getting more explicitly represented today, which the Buddhists, because they just kind of... Oh, here's another one where, I think it was Jesus said something like, you have to, like, you know, love thy enemy, love thy neighbor, go out into the crowd, this sort of thing. And so, like, just because he's Jesus doesn't mean he doesn't talk with people. He doesn't just, like, live on some mountain. And Siddhartha, after he, like, in the story of him, like the Buddha, he went to, like, Nirvana, and they said, like, would you like to stay here or go back to Earth? And he said, like I can't stay here knowing that other people can't come here, so I'm going back to Earth.
Yeah.
And so he goes back. And in Zen Buddhism, there's the story, before enlightenment, I chopped wood and carried water.
Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Yeah. And also, like, in Maps of Meaning, Jordan Peterson says, Buddhism gets it wrong because enlightenment's not enough. And I was like, but in Zen Buddhism, and in Buddhism, I think. Yeah. Although he does then say later about the Buddhism where it does say that it's not enough. So I'm not... I know what. So Jordan Peterson was quoting, like, Jung or something, I think, who got it slightly wrong there.
Yeah, like, there's a very... Like, that sort of thing with me, I'm, like, trying to address it, like, with the school. Like, it's very hard, like, have to do all this stuff. It's like, I don't have time to, like, wash my hair was one of them.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, no matter what, I'm still gonna wash. You have to take care of yourself. You have to keep on living.
Yeah. I have this point.
With everything else going on, you still have to keep on living. You can't stop living. And so it's like, oh, I have so much stuff to do, and my friends invited me to play a video game online. Okay, I'll play a video game because I can manage my time still.
Yeah, you have to manage your time, but you also have to keep so RimWorld, right? There was this. I was reading about these people. This guy had depression. And he played RimWorld, and it cured his depression. And the reason it cured his depression
is because all his characters had depression.
No, it's really interesting. He played for like hundreds of hours or thousands of hours even. And then he said, after playing this game for thousands of hours, my depression's gone. I'm uninstalling it. I like play it too much almost. But what happened was he, if I remember it correctly, it was the fact that pawns are most efficient if you label their work time and play time rather than leaving it to. And so he was able to pull his life together, basically, because he's, wait a minute, if I can play when it's time to play and I can feel not guilty, and I can work when it's time to work and feel achieved, that means that I can always play when it's time to play, and I always get enough done, so I don't have constant feelings of guilt. So he basically made time for life by separating it, which is kind of cool.
No, I find that I barely assign my pawns anything.
Yeah.
I give them anything when they wake up so they're allowed to eat food.
Yeah.
And when they're going to sleep. But then I have the rest of it to sleep, work, or joy.
Yeah. I just like do the joy marker, drag it over the 24 hours, and then like let them go on gosh. No. No, I actually set it to don't work, and I get really frustrated, like do whatever, and I get really frustrated because they'll like, it's so inefficient. They'll like half work on a thing, and then they'll leave and like play horseshoes and walk across like the entire map to do it, and then walk back, and they could get like twice as much done if I just assigned it. But assigning it takes so much work.
Well, but it's with one of the mods, I had a zombie, and they have no requirements, and so I set to 24 hours work. And the problem with zombies is they move at 25% speed of everything else. However, it did more work than like an efficient walker who's good at working, because it's just working 24 hours straight.
Well, I just set the cleaning.
His job was hauling and cleaning.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Because it's always like they're my pawns do it a bit too fast, so they do it and they have nothing to do.
Yeah.
So someone that's just slow and steady would be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But
although as a zombie doing the cleaning, he disturbs everyone who walks by besides the necromancer.
So your idea of like you have to live while you're still doing stuff, though. I think that's like my friend and I. We've definitely talked about that, where he was like really stressed out by school as well, and he was like he used to think like just when I'm done this class, just when I'm done this class, just when I'm done. And he did that for like 3 years, and then he's like, I'm gonna be in school if I want to do what I want to do for another like 7 years or whatever. Like, I can't put off my life until then. Like, that's a long part of my life, and that's the thing with like editing this book, right? Like, or writing a book in general, like. School, I think school teaches you terribly, like elementary school, high school, because it teaches you do your homework and then you're done, right?
Yeah.
But it should really teach you, like, you're done at the end of the day or something. Like, you shouldn't get homework, I think. Or there should also be the idea of a task you just complete a bit at a day, not like rush it overnight or something. Because writing a book, I had a mindset in school, which was get all your homework done, then you can have fun, right?
Yeah. Writing
a book takes months or years. And in that mindset, I hurt myself for quite a while, just like, get it done and then you can have fun. Get it done and then you can have fun. That's impossible. You can't do that. You have to. You have to live.
Yeah.
You can't. And like I was thinking, like I'm almost done editing. It's going to take me the end of May is the current estimate, and I'm on target for it.
Yeah.
And this final edit, hopefully. And so I'm like, I was thinking like, man, yeah, I'm just nailing down this editing. Going to just go to that, and then it's like, yeah, I'm not going to do stuff. I got to keep all my mental power. And it's 2 months. Like that's a long time.
Yeah.
You can't. I have to still do stuff.
Yeah. You have to live your life. You can't stop living your life.
You still gotta chop wood, carry water.
Yeah, chop wood, carry water. There's some great Zen sayings in Buddhism. Yeah. Like, one of my favorite ones is when you drink tea, drink tea. When you read, read. When you drink tea and read, drink tea and read.
Yeah, when you drink tea, only drink tea.
Yeah.
When you read, only read. When you drink tea and read, only drink tea and read.
I really like that saying.
Yeah. There's another one which is like related to the idea of everything being subjective and like all connected in a way. In the Zen, which is like guys like the first apprentice is like the flag is moving, and the second one's like no, it's not, the wind is moving, and then the master comes the mind.
Yeah. So a lot of our Zen little bits is probably based off the Zen comics.
Yeah, definitely.
And also that poem, that book.
Also,
has.
Yeah, I read a book of...
Yeah. But so the guy that the Zen comics was based off of, can't remember his name.
Beat a student to death.
No, he didn't.
Didn't he?
No, it is bizarre. It was misreported. So what happened? He's a bit of a weird guy.
Yeah.
And when he wanted to teach a student a lesson, he would strike them with his stick.
Yeah.
And he would swing his stick incredibly hard, and it's like it is a hefty thing, and then he'd tap them. So it like he had so much control, he'd swing it and then stop and tap them.
Yeah.
And some like
well, not the guy the comics are based on, but the apprentice, the comic in the comics.
Yeah.
The guy that wants to become enlightened, because the master in that is like the teacher of the guy who beat their student.
So that teacher with the stick.
Yeah.
And so they interviewed him because at that time there's newspapers, there's printing press, and they're saying like we have reports of you beating your students.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is how hard I hit them. And he like swung at the reporter, and the reporter was terrified. And he tapped them.
Yeah.
And it's like, but there's reports you hitting them over and over again. And he walked over to a student who's like sitting there.
Yeah.
And it's like, and he looked at them and they're like sitting there trying to meditate. And he said to the student, that is not Zen. And the student went, what? And looked up. And they started hitting them over the head repeatedly with the stick. And it was like, swing, stop, tap, swing, stop, tap. But it looks like he's hitting them really hard. And the student's just like what? Just like rubbed his head and like wasn't all that hurt. And the reporter was aghast. And like the student's unhurt. And he's like, and that is so they know what Zen is and what Zen is not. But like he had tons of students that master. They like it was a movement like trying to go to his master, get alignment. People traveled to meet him, like long distance, expensive, hard travel back then. And a lot of people left because he tried to not teach people. Like he wanted to teach them, but he was trying to make sure if they're ready or not. And so he would berate people in the nicest ways possible, but drive people insane. Like people trying to like, who are you? Like that was one of his main big ones was he'd ask people when they arrived, who are you? Yeah. And they'd tell him their name, and he would never address them by their name, and he constantly asked them, who are you? And he'd do stuff like that all the time. Like he would ask someone, what are you doing? And they'd tell him what they were doing. And then he'd like just yell at them going around, like, you're not doing that! And he'd like hit them with his stick, and he's just like trying to get rid of as many students as he could. And then they'd realize that he's like teaching them Zen thing of like, I am no one and everything is nothing. Yeah.
It's not nihilistic somehow.
Not nihilistic, no, because with Zen, with the not, you are nothing, and everything is nothing, and nothing is all. And so there is meaning in the everything is nothing, and all is one.
Sure, there is.
It's the process of like cut wood. It's like keep on living.
Yeah. Or maybe it's an illusion would be a better way.
Yeah, this is something I wanted to talk about. I might have talked about before.
I could say nothing exists. That works for me. But that you are nothing, that way doesn't work for me. But nothing exists, I can work with that.
Yeah, so there's a very interesting thing which I don't know if it is or not. I've talked about before probably. Is like experiencing enlightenment. Yeah. Like I think I might have experienced enlightenment before.
Yeah, once I took off my backpack.
Yeah, and when you're in enlightenment, it's like you say, I guess, with Jesus, is everything makes sense even if you don't know the answers.
Yeah.
Everything makes sense. Everything's fine. You feel incredibly light, like there's no stress, no worries. And like whatever you do, you can do with joy. You don't have to do anything, but you still do stuff because you can.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly wonderful and really awesome. And it's just like, it's not like I don't know, like getting a good back rub. Like, oh, it feels nice. It's everything is right and nice.
Everything is as it should be.
Yeah. Like that's
like Buddha.
Like enlightenment, and I sort of know how to get there in my mind. Like when I'm not enlightened, it's like, I think I know how to get into enlightenment. I'm like, oh, it's so much work, and like you don't actually get anything done when you're enlightened, and like it's like you're just silly and it doesn't make sense.
That is not enlightenment.
But like that, like when you're not enlightened, for me anyways, like it's probably different for other people. But for me, it's like, oh, it's so much work to get there. And then when I'm enlightened, it's like, why am I not always enlightened? Like, why do I keep myself to the point of not being enlightened? It's like a bit of a ponder. It's like, huh, isn't that strange?
Yeah, that's one way to.
And I don't know, I think that's my own personal struggle with enlightenment, is I know how to get there, which from all accounts I've heard a lot of people don't. But when I'm not there, it's almost like I don't want to be there.
That feeling of no worries, often what, from accounts anyways, what people experience before, while they're in the process of killing themselves, and if they survive, they can report on it.
Huh.
Because suddenly they're going to die, so nothing matters. Well, it's not that nothing matters, it's that, well, in a way it's nothing matters, but in a way it's your worries don't matter.
Yeah.
And therefore you can do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, oh, wait, no, whoops. And yeah, so it's kind of awful in a way, but it's also kind of like...
Yeah, but it's very much like, it takes a while for me, like sometimes I slip into it by accident, like have that mindset. But other times I can work at it and get there. And sometimes like, can I really work at it and get there? And like I question it, like, can I actually do this? Or is it an illusion in my mind? Can I actually get there? And so like those doubts stop me from getting there. But if like I get past it and go through, it's like, oh, I got there again. And then there's sometimes where it's like, I feel like I'm half enlightened, like half, like dipping a foot into it. And then once I have a foot in it, it's really easy to dip over. And then you're just in that state until you aren't. There is no like dipping your foot out. It's just you're there and then you're like, it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it enlightened. That's like...
Well, I'm talking about the Zen statement of enlightenment.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I'd call it that though exactly. But I would, yeah, because it's almost like a form of insanity described that way. Like you can't live like that because you need...
I think you can live like that though, because you'll do what you need to do.
Well, you can't because you're not right now. Like you can't. If it's a state that you need to enter, then you're kind of entering like a, I don't know, you could call it a heightened state of consciousness. Like you're kind of doing drugs. So
well, what you need to do is you need to always be there. Like you need to have your life to the point where you just are there. You don't have to enter it. You just are there.
Well, to have your life that's the thing. Like where your life is shouldn't matter in a way. And so the fact that you need to do all these extra things like meditate and take drugs and live on top of a mountain and like have $1 million, like they they make it like not sustainable in a way. So the sustainable might be walking the infinite stair, like is what I'm getting. And I would call like enlightenment also a way of walking the stair, the realization that you are walking the stair and the identification with the process of walking the stair.
I guess another thing, even like what you're saying here, is
because like after enlightenment, I chopped wood and carried water. Like it's not enough almost. Like it's just you have seen the infinite sandwich. That doesn't mean you are walking the stair. Well, you've seen the infinite sandwich, now start walking. Yeah. And you can keep your eye on the sandwich. And that is faith. That is God. That is enlightenment.
Can you let me complete my statement? Sorry, you're interrupting.
I'm trying to let you complete your statement. Go on, hurry.
All right.
I'm trying really hard. It's difficult.
Over this past year, I think I've like personally myself gotten like closer to just living in that state though, like living near what it is. So I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Just through my life, I've actually gotten to that without having to do the meditation. Is like just accepting and letting that be.
And I think that's just like worship of a higher truth, of an ultimate truth. Because
it's staring at the infinite sandwich.
Yeah, like because you're basically like when you say praise Buddha, right? Mm-hmm. That means there are no worries because everything is going as it should. That means that everything is subsumed to this greater thing. That all meaning is there. All because the true meaning is discovering the meaning. The true meaning is walking the stair, or the true meaning. So the enlightenment, where everything makes sense and you're calm and peaceful, is the praise Buddha moment, where you realize that you should worship something higher. Which is why religion done well, I think, is actually very similar to enlightenment done dogmatically. Not so much.
What spreads faster, dogmatic or...
Yeah. Well, I think like Michael from the Dresden Files, he's a great example of a religious figure.
Yeah.
Like he's basically an enlightened Zen monk or something.
Yeah.
You could look at him that way. Because he just has his absolute faith in God, which is the idea of something greater, and also there's a magical power, so it's like doubly. Like, yeah. But he's weird because he actually has... Well, he has proper faith. Like his wife believes in God in like the dogmatic religious like do this or you'll go to hell sort of sense. Whereas Michael believes in God in like here is an all-forgiving, all-compassionate idea. This encompasses everything. It's the ultimate truth. There's nothing before it. My ideals of like having to arrive on time or having to do something in a certain way don't matter before this because it's the greatest thing. Yeah. But he's also human at the same time because, like he's embarrassed when he goes to jail and stuff because he's still human and he still has a personality. I guess what you're talking about sounds like almost devoid of personality.
No, there is personality with it.
Yeah.
I just don't know how to describe it.
I guess, yeah.
I think like it feels like right to be like that. Like it feels like that is what you aim for almost.
I think there's like two paradises and one is greater than the other, and I'm just afraid of the one almost. So the first paradise is like the paradise of the start of the universe, or of Eden, where you have everything united.
Yeah.
And there's no differentiation, and then the knowledge of good and evil destroys paradise.
Yeah.
And then there is the second paradise, which is the reconciliation of good and evil, but still distinct, like the yin yang symbol. Yeah. Like this is actually fascinating. The yin yang Tao is considered
the line.
The line in the yin yang. It's walking the line of the yin yang. It's a curved line, like the wibbly wobbly infinite stair. Like it's the same ideas. Like we're basically like Chinese philosophers.
Like second to Confucius.
Yeah, and there's like
that's quite the claim.
Within each, I learned that they're called paisleys. Within each paisley, there's a dot which shows the unification of good and evil. Let's say, but it's not gray. It's not a gray circle. It's actually unified. So the original paradise is a gray circle. This paradise is a black and white paisleys combined with a circle in the center of each. So my feared paradise is the gray circle, which is what I'm worried you're describing almost. Worried. Whereas the true paradise for non-losers is the real paradise, which only cool kids are allowed. I'm saying your paradise isn't good enough.
I think that the alignment I'm talking about is the yin yang. Because I really you are aware of it and you're aware of good and evil.
Because innocence, I think, and what the dogs live in that I talked about, like the evil dogs.
No, it is not innocent.
Yeah, but like the evil dogs, they live in the gray circle, right? Yeah. They live in this circle where it's paradise because everything is unified.
Yeah.
But the greater paradise is where everything is reconciled.
Yeah, no, I think the alignment
in an orderly fashion.
I think the alignment that I don't like saying that
well, it's also just really pretentious sounding, I know, so that's sort of what's putting me on edge as well.
I know it's pretentious. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, I know. It's the infinite stair, Connor.
The infinite. I don't have a Fu Manchu mustache. I'm not 80 years old in there, so I feel like there's no weight to saying that I feel like I've gone there.
Yeah, no, I think you have to be. I have walked. I have seen the infinite sandwich. I mean, the ultimate sandwich. I have divided the pie.
It's basically that, but
except you.
Well, it
because the only way to divide the line is to tear the paper in half, and then it is useless.
I don't know how to put it.
I think I know what you're talking about. I think I know what you're talking. I've that sort of happiness when I was coming home. Even you could almost call something like that. Hey, that was worth it. Everything's good. I don't have to worry. There was all this worries on my mind, and I thought about it. It wasn't I'm afraid to think about them because they'll ruin this happy state. I thought about them, and I'm like, okay, there's a solution to one. There's a solution to the other. I don't know the solution to this one, but I don't care.
Yeah, well,
whatever.
For me, I had experience recently, it was a month or so ago, but it's I had these projects, I need to get them done. And I was in that state of mind, and it was I don't have time to be like this, was my initial thought. And it was I do have time. And it's but I'm not doing this right now. And it's you'll get it done. So it was very much...
That's not enlightenment, that's procrastination.
It was I will get this done. I was working on something at the time, but it's I feel I don't have enough time, bunch of stress. And then when it's in that state, it's looking over all those problems, and it's I do have enough time. I can spend time with my family. It's it's going to work out. It's just yeah.
That was actually the other thing.
Yeah, it is basically it is almost the knowledge that it's going to work out. It's
I think I can actually use a koan or a Zen saying to describe that. And because I thought of it when I was reading Maps of Meaning, he said when you follow the process rather than the law, when you follow the spirit, when you follow the act of the heroes rather than of the tyrant father or the wise father, and instead you identify with the hero, then everything suddenly makes sense. You are aware of what you can do and can't do. It's ultimate honesty in a way. And you see your limits, you can extend your limits, you can learn more about them, and so you don't worry about stuff because you will face everything as it comes and you will defeat it or not, right? And so there's a Zen saying which is if you can do something, do not worry, for you will do it. Yeah. If you can't do something, do not worry, for there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's and
I love that one.
Yeah. And it's amazing. Zen's been everywhere. It's actually so everything is though. Christianity has, Buddhism has in India. Sure, the First Nations over in America have the various groups, and Like everyone's thought of it. It's like it's just different ways. I think what Zen did, which no one else did, was they designed it so that it couldn't be dogmatic, which it has advantages and disadvantages. The advantages, it's not dogmatic. So you don't have Zen extremists. You don't have people. Anyone that follows Zen isn't following it wrong because you can't. Like you either get it or you don't in a way. The problem is it's a lot harder to behave properly because you have no idea what they're going on about until you understand it.
Yeah.
Whereas in Christianity, you can sort of fake it until you make it, or in a way. As in Zen, it's like there's no room for dogmatism because they've only stated the end of it, and so basically what you do is you're like, I have an idea. Is it correct? Ah, that master, that he understood too. I see now. Or like, they're trying to like guide you with like stone. Like Christianity is like a path, whereas Zen Buddhism is like rocks in the woods, and you're like you still have to like use your knowledge of like woodcraft. But then every time you find a rock, you're like, oh, I'm on the right path.
There's a interesting thing. Like I thought about this before. I've told you, I think, but it's
But Christians are afraid of stepping off the path is the problem.
Yeah.
Whereas the Buddhists
wander.
Yeah.
Which is if you tell a bunch of Zen Buddhists,
they pergonate.
I am Buddhist.
Yeah.
I mean, I am Buddha. Like I'm the reincarnation of Buddha.
They will kill you.
No.
Connor, that's in their religion.
Right. But
if you meet Buddha in the road, kill him. That's what they say. Which means if you think you've come to enlightenment, you haven't. Or if you think you've reached it, you're not there.
Yeah, but
you can't reach it. It's a process. You have to walk the path. You can't be at the sandwich. We said this earlier.
Yeah. I'm trying to express my statement.
Yes, but you have to die.
What? They will go, okay, yeah, sure you are. Like, they're not even consonantally, but they're like, okay, yeah, you're Buddha. No, it's not even that. It's like, okay, cool, you're Buddha. Like, they'll go, yeah, you're incarnation Buddha. That's cool.
Oh, man.
Yeah, sort of like that. Whereas you tell a Christian, I'm Jesus, you might have some problems.
Well, actually, though, the Christians don't explicitly say kill someone if they claim they're Christ, whereas the Buddhists explicitly meet Buddha in the road kill.
I know, but it's just like, think about that. Like, you go up to a bunch of Zen Buddhist monks, like, I'm Buddha, you tell them that.
Heretic!
Like, how are they going to react? Where if you go up to, like, a bunch of Christians, like, I'm Jesus reincarnated, like, where are the reactions going to be? Like, the Buddhists will probably go, sure, man.
So I realized something. Speaking of, you should read Wheel of Time. There's a time where Rand says something like, I will destroy you all with my salvation, or something like that. Jesus says something very similar. It's like, not only did the Bible steal from Lord of the Rings, it also stole from the Wheel of Time. It's like Jesus is Randolph Thor. Because there was a bunch of false ones, and then there was the real one, and then...
Well, when you say sort of like Christians do, like there's some like Michael doing it right sort of thing. There's a video I saw a while ago, which was this woman was getting really mad in a church, and she's going on about original sin.
Yeah.
And saying like the church is unfair, like original sin, like she's getting really upset and like saying like there's nothing we can do. Why do you follow this religion?
Yeah.
And this father came over to her and he's like, Jesus has died on the cross to forgive us of all our sins.
Yeah.
So even if there was an original sin, he is forgiven. And that's like that father there is sort of like one of those people like knows what he's doing.
Yeah. I think even original sin gets like a bad rap. Like, original sin is the knowledge of good and evil. You left the gray you were in paradise. You were in the gray paradise. Yeah. Original sin destroyed paradise. That's what original sin is. And now you must redeem it. You must create the yin-yang.
Yeah, you must create Eden again.
Yeah, so Jesus created the yin-yang. He showed you how to build the yin-yang.
Yeah. He showed you how to rebuild Eden.
Except better, because Eden was the gray circle. Yeah, Jesus showed you the kingdom of heaven. Yeah, and the kingdom of heaven is the yin-yang, whereas Eden was the gray circle.
Yeah, Jesus showed you the glory of God.
So at one end of the infinite staircase, there is the gray circle. At the other end is the yin-yang united, except that doesn't work, because the yin-yang is also the infinite stair. So that doesn't really work.
The yin-yang's the line on it.
But it's also everything, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the...
Well,
there is no end to the infinite stair.
Yeah, the infinite stair could be the sandwich. All right. Well, thank you for listening. If you listened this far,
it's got too deep. Wait, no, that's not deep. That's insanity. Never. No, that's I don't know what that is. The stair is the infinite.
We'll leave it there. So
actually, no, sort of. Like, okay, Jesus is God on earth, right? Jesus is the infinite stair. God is the sandwich, right? So you could say that the sandwich is the stair in the sense that the stair is the sandwich's representation on Earth. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, shall we
yeah,
there. So it kind of works.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, it's
Yeah, so bye.
Bye.